Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Just a few things to get to before we get into the other stuff. I want to cover a little bit more of the Luigi thing, but I don't want to make the whole video about that. I don't know if there's any new news, just some reaction stuff. I want to get to the view stuff here, but I have a bunch of other things that I didn't get to the last 2 days because of the whole Luigi thing. Okay, so I got a comment from somebody here, and this person writes, let me make this bigger. This is to my Luigi, you silly goose, don't bring your crime to-do list to Mickey D's. And the person writes, hi, Paul, regarding your view count, you can ponder breaking up your 2.5-hour videos to 3 parts. I think you get more views for shorter videos with targeted content named in the title so people can manage their watch time more easily. And if you keep your long form videos, remind us that we can set a sleeper in the YouTube settings. Sleeper timer. I used this setting a million times to speed up, but DUH, I don't know what that means. It's an acronym. I have never noticed a sleeper timer until a creator taught me it was useful the tip last week. Well, I'm not sure about the sleeper timer. The issue with that is YouTube is a lot of ways ass backwards in its the way that it wants you to produce as much content as possible. All these platforms want you to be on there as long as possible, right? There was a video out, I forget the name about it. Well, maybe I could look it up real quick here. It's called The Social Dilemma. It's about social media, and a big part of it's about people watching conspiracy theory videos and how Google and Facebook and these other companies, YouTube, they want you to stay on their site as long as possible. So they recommend things in such a way, they get to know you and they recommend things in such a way that they can keep you there as long as possible. And that changed for truthers, which we know, and now even for everybody else to some extent. I'll get into that in a moment. But you understand that having more content available to people is a good thing. And now, of course, YouTube runs ads on long form videos, a lot more ads. And so that's another way that it's better for them. But in the stupidity that is YouTube, they punish people for putting out more content. And so if I broke my videos up, YouTube would only notify one of the videos, the first one or whatever it did, the notifications, or it would, whatever, it might not notify people at all. And then you put out a second video, they don't give out any notifications. And, not as many ads are being run on a shorter video, so it'd be it's just more work for me for less results. Because if I put out 4 videos in a day, if I broke up my videos to 25 minutes, say, or whatever, shorter segments, I would get overall more views, but it would be the same people basically watching 4 different videos, and it would still be less overall views. And YouTube would say, well, most of these people aren't interested in this channel because I'm putting out too much content, because they punish you by, when people don't watch your content, when people can't keep up with it, they stop notifying those people. And then they, as your channel being one that people are not interested in because they're not watching the videos, they're not clicking on the links when they get sent it, they can't keep up with the content, there's too many videos, and so it hurts the channel. I don't care about views. It's not the view count that matters to me. I mean, I would like more views, and I don't, I'd like more subscribers, but none of those things are the important number. The important number is how much money the videos are generating, because I'm not making enough money now. I said before that I work every day. So if I make $100 a day, which is the bare minimum, I was making more than that for a long period of time. And then about 2 years ago, it dropped below that. It's been above that for the last 3 months because of the election and now Christmas. And then next year, it'll be probably pretty abysmal. And so there's been a couple of issues, right? Because people are looking at this from their perspective. People are saying, well, when people try to advise me It's not from being successful YouTubers. I don't have people who are have more views or making more money than me leaving tips and things about how they did it, because pretty much everybody in YouTube is suffering the same thing, which is this. So my channel was consistently growing in 2016, 17, 18. I decided to do this as a full-time job. And my family and I were stuck in India. Not stuck there because it was, there was good things that were going on there, but I had to come back to America. And we had sold our homestead, and my ex went back to America, even though there's a whole story there. I've talked to the Journey series extensively. But our marriage was fundamentally over. And I was with my kids in India. They wanted to stay there for, maybe another year or two. And I needed to be able to make money, and the only way was to, my YouTube channel pop. I had some viral videos, a video that had 2 million views. And I had the YouTube channel around for a while. And all of a sudden, something made it just explode with views, right? Where I was getting 1,000 views per video, even less than 1,000 per video. I was making about $100 a month, and I was making videos 1 or 2 a month. And sometimes I would go months without making them, come back. It was not a job. It was a hobby, right? That made some money. It was some promotional, promoting my books and other things that I was doing. But in terms of the videos, I had the Michelle Obama 95% chance she's a man video that ended up getting 2 million views. And then I followed it up with all these A-list actors who were forced to put on a dress. So this is back in 2014, 15, before all the stuff happened with Caitlyn Jenner and all that stuff, right? All the gender stuff. This was like stuff that I was already sort of exposing. And, the audience that was coming to me, for the most part, weren't going to be people who would graduate to like the videos I'm making now, because I was going to change and evolve and get into more of the things that I have to offer, specifically the spiritual stuff and some of the, the left-right paradigm stuff, because, there's a lot of people who are Trump fans or the right-wing fans. If I was a QB or a Christian or, any number of these big demographics, or as just somebody like who could pander to sheeple. I made a lot of videos with Illuminati in the title, and they got hundreds of thousands of views, right? But those people didn't understand. A lot of those people that would come to those videos didn't understand my other videos, right? So, as I evolved as a video maker, my videos, the audience would shrink. The potential audience was going to shrink, which is part of it, right? This is all like, how things work. If you don't evolve, it gets monotonous and talking about the same things over and over again. And then people lose interest. Like, I don't think people care about Illuminati things anymore, for example. People don't care about pizza stuff. They don't care about the big event in 2001. People move on from things. And there are some people who get stuck and just make the same videos over and over again, and they retain some level of audience. But, there's just ways that things have to change and evolve, just for your own sanity, and just you have to become better at something, or you're not, if you're not becoming better at what you do, it's time to do something else, right? But when I first started to take this as a job when I was in India, I looked at my videos and I realized that all the videos that were making money and bringing people in were Hollywood based. And I had only made like 10 videos, 9 or 10 of those. And the top 10 videos, YouTube listed the top 10 videos. And I looked at them like, oh my God, because I didn't want to make Hollywood videos. I don't care about Hollywood, all these things. Like, I just had to do it as a job. That's why this is a job. And now I've learned to enjoy that. But YouTube changed and started censoring and demonetizing. Like a lot of the videos I did about celebrity sacrifice, blood sacrifice, Illuminati sacrifice, things like this. All of my Prince videos, for example, got, I put out about 10 or 12 of the Prince videos. They're interesting, videos. So this is when my family and I were transitioning back to America. So this is 2016. We're coming back to America. And all of a sudden, YouTube had a problem with these videos and started to demonetize them. And they all had over 100,000 views. Most of them had like 200,000 views. And then YouTube was starting to censor. This was back in 2016. they had the ad apocalypse where they themselves were, you know, advertisers said they weren't going to advertise it until they started censoring basically truther content and things that were, not sanctioned, and they started to look at the videos that were being produced and be much more restrictive about which videos they would run ads on. And the truthers suffered more than anybody else. But then YouTube stopped. They changed their algorithms so that, I got up to 200,000 subscribers, and my channel was growing by 100 subscribers a day. And so I would have been up to 1 million subscribers in a short period of time, a couple of years. And my channel would have been, bigger and more relevant, right? And I would have had probably 20, 30, 50,000 core viewers. My videos would be getting 10, 20,000, 50,000 views per day, right? So that would be more than enough. If that was the case now, I'd be fine. But YouTube stopped recommending videos like the videos that I produced. Not just truther videos, but lots of people suffered from this, right? And they started putting out crap, which they called authoritative videos from CNN and all these kind of sources. And there are certain channels that they still kept on recommending, and my channel was never going to be one of those channels, right? And so and it happens to people just not truthers. So all the videos that I produced years and years ago, they got hundreds of thousands of views. I had 3 or 4 videos that had over 1 million views, maybe more, maybe like 10 videos. And then I had a bunch of other videos that had, 200,000, whatever it was, right? And so hundreds of thousands, sometimes 500, like lots of views. My videos will never do that again. Like the way YouTube has restructured their algorithms, my videos are not going to get out to people and, not going to be recommended like they used to. Not just because of the truther stuff, because their whole system's fucked. And, they don't have the same, with TikTok and the growing, these other alternative platforms, people don't like YouTube as much. It's not the only game in town. And then YouTube just being restrictive and changing the way that they recommend videos, it's just not possible. So the way it used to work, I would put out a video, and YouTube some videos it would choose to just basically endorse, because the videos were very similar. And the ones that I had Illuminati in the title at the time when people really were interested in that kind of thing, and symbolism and all the rest of it, right? Celebrity's name in the title. And YouTube would pick up the video and start recommending it to all kinds of people. It would find itself in the sidebar of recommended videos on people's phones and other places. And so it would go like viral, or whatever they called it, like something that's not quite viral but close to viral. These videos would just take off. And I would get all these new people finding out about my channel. And a small number of those new people would would really like this channel because of this, the sophistication, the more sophisticated videos about spirituality and these other things, right? People who weren't like Trumpers, these kind of things, right? People who weren't right-wing, people who are left-right paradigm people who could understand that the system is, it's more comprehensive than what people or most truthers will say and things like this, right? And so those of you who really like this channel, the more, intellectual, more intelligent videos, the better videos that are more, I say highbrow, but more sublime, more subtle videos, right? That aren't just mocking celebrities or whatever it might be. And so, the people who really find that this channel has something different to offer is a small percentage. If I would get 100,000 views, there might be 200 people that would really be into the channel. So it's not, there's a small retention rate, but you need to get in front of new people. And so YouTube stopped doing that. And then shortly after that, YouTube was pressured by the Biden administration and, the powers that be. This is 2018, so going from 2018, 19, and then 20, all these restrictions came in. And YouTube was pressured to change their search engine, which was completely fucked. So the first part that killed lots of channels and destroyed our ability to bring in new people, because people get tired or just, get bored, or they get busy and, they have less time, whatever it might be. They they end up not, they're not going to watch every video I make for so many years. Like some people will come and go, right? I mean, they still like the content, but they have other things to do, or they get interested in other things, or they, whatever happens, right? People go through phases in their life where they have more time, and then, they don't, or they change their interests or whatever. And so you have to constantly bring in new people. And the only way to do that is if YouTube recommends the videos to new people. And they weren't doing that anymore. So that suffocates all of us on that YouTube's doing that to. And it's not just truthers. Like I said, this has been a big problem, right? Like I looked at a number of videos of people who YouTube put in a category, and I forget the name of it. You guys have maybe watched my video about it. But YouTube has a category where it thinks that people are inflating their own view count, watching their own videos or doing things with, I don't know, bots or whatever. And there were people, these weren't truthers, that were put in this category. And all of a sudden their videos shrank. They were making, YouTube wasn't running ads or was taking the ad money for, it was more like a scam that YouTube was running to take people's ad money. And people who were making a living, and also, there was one young woman who was a content creator. Like she was, trained in how to make videos. And so she was putting out a lot of content, how to make videos, and she did stuff. She wasn't like a truther, but some, level of, talking about things that were maybe a little bit controversial. And she was saying that her video count had shrunk, and it'd go through phases. Like she would contact YouTube, and they would like take off the restriction for a short period of time, and then a few months would go by and it was back again, right? And so this unauthorized views or something it was called, right? Whatever it was. So, but YouTube was starting to get shitty, right? Like that was the bottom line. And, they weren't recommending videos to new people. And then they changed their search engine results. So you could actually search the title of some video and they would recommend some bullshit, the kind of content they were putting out there. And it was shitty content. It wasn't just CNN and, it was like people like that guy who he made conspiracy theory videos, Shane. And he's a piece of shit guy who's not, just a normal YouTuber. One of these popular YouTubers that isn't really conspiracy theorist, but he put out these videos that were, conspiracy theory light and just, sucky. And people would get recommended those videos, right? Like even to the point when I asked my viewers to, I was running ads. So I was actually paying YouTube. Like this is some of the things I've gone through. I was paying YouTube to run ads, right? Which would lead people to my channel. Like I had to pay YouTube for something they used to do for free. And they even fucked that up, right? And so this is the beginning of when I realized that there was no hope, because I found the channels they were running my ads on. And they were the worst channels. Like people who watched the videos that my ads were running on would never become my audience. They were lame-ass channels that had nothing to do with what my content was. And they have all these sophisticated algorithms and, AI bots and all these things, right? And my wife said, well, maybe there's a way you could suggest channels to them. And I was in contact with a human. Like I had a person that was in charge, because they were, when you run ads, they actually, cater to you a little bit, or they try to, they pretend to. And I said to the guy, is there a way that I could run my ads on specific channels, right? And he said, yeah, there's a place where you can put in all these channels. So I asked all of you, if you guys remember this, I asked everybody if they could recommend channels that they watched that were similar to what I, that they thought would be, a shared audience, right? And some of the people I'd heard of, and some of them I hadn't. And some of them were like, didn't run ads at all, so I couldn't use them. But I ended up having like 48 of like or so channels. And I put all these channels in. It was, it's kind of laborious, right? Because, it took time to do all this. And I said to the guy, I just want to run ads on these channels. And plus it was supporting other, truthers. So it was what I would want anyway. And it was the channels that were most likely would get people to come over to my channel, right? Like it was an audience that might really like my videos, because you want to find the right targeted audience, obviously, if you're spending money on these ads. And so the guy said, well, we can't do that. We can take your suggestions. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm a customer. I'm telling you I want to run ads on these fucking channels, right? And he said, well, the machine learning has to catch up. They'll take that into consideration, because the machine knew better on, so I had my audience, people who really like my videos, say, these are the channels we also like, right? So those would be the premium channels. Plus, those channels are going to be in the same shape that I am. And, channels get less money per ad based on what category YouTube puts you in. And so these are not these cream of the crop channels. They're truther channels that are all struggling. And so the ads would be cheaper for me, so I could run more ads on these channels. So it was better for me in every way, right? So what he was proposing to me is that I pay for a bunch of ads on channels where the people watching the videos would never be my audience. So it was throwing away money until their algorithms and their machine learning could get around to figuring out the channels they were going to run ads on. But they were never going to run ads on those channels anyway, because they don't like those channels. Those channels are, whatever, shadow banned or whatever the fuck they do to them, right? And so even if I was paying YouTube to do what they used to do for free, they still were going to do it in a shitty way, and I wasn't going to get more people. I wasn't getting new subscribers. They call this customer acquisition costs. And YouTube sucks. Their ad program sucks, right? And I also started at Google, which was even worse. And I got into an argument with this young woman from Thailand or one of those islands, who wanted me to run my ads on Google Ads. I'm like, no, I want to run them on YouTube, right? And she was like, no. And then she ran my ad not as I made a short little 15-second ad that they could run before a video, right? And she ran it where they were putting it in the sidebar and recommending a video when it just didn't make sense amongst the other things that people were watching, because they had a list of these categories and these different things you could put in, and none of them were about truth, none of them were about God, none of them were about conspiracy theories, none of them were about any of these things. Like, you put out these lists of the kind of videos you make, and the categories were so generic, but none of them had anything to do with the kind of content I make. I mean, there was in terms of me giving them input of the kind of channel I was, there was no options that would describe my channel even remotely. And so it was a complete mess. Their ad program sucks. YouTube's a fucking joke. Google's a joke. And there's the massive amount of people who are into truther videos. I mean, it's like 1/3 of the population. I mean, remember when they didn't do this, it was one of the biggest sections of videos. So many people were making this kind of content. Even people would, they would take your videos. There's people in other countries would take your whole video and put it up. I had videos where the video I put out was, I was a guy got like 250,000 views, like a Beyonce Illuminati video. And some guy lifted my whole video and put it up and monetized it. I gave him a copyright strike. This guy was just stealing content. And he was in a foreign country, and he got 500,000 views because his title was better, because I had to watch what title I put, because they would demonetize it. At that point, they were starting to do that, right? And so that was the kind of, there was just all these people who were interested in this kind of content. And then YouTube basically hid that content away. They stopped recommending the content, and even when you search for it, they gamed the search engine, and they said, it was completely arrogant on their part, Google and YouTube, because basically what they are is search engines. And you would search for something, and they knew what you were searching for based on your view history and what you were, all the information they knew about you. Plus the words that you would type in should generate, people would search for pockets of the future, and my channel would come up last. And I had a bigger channel and a bigger audience, and I was the first person to use the term pockets of the future. It was like my term, right? So you would type something in, and YouTube knew what you wanted, and they say, fuck you, you should watch this instead. You should watch this lame content that you can see you can watch this CNN video that you could watch in so many different places. CNN doesn't even belong on YouTube, right? From the standpoint that they're not, they have their own platform. The mainstream media, Fox and MSNBC and all these, these news outlets, they have channels. They have legitimate TV station channels and cable news channels and things. They're available in all these different formats. And so people can find them anywhere. But when people would search for specific content, the same content that built YouTube into the platform it is today, YouTube would be like, "Fuck you, we're not showing you that content. We're not even giving you the option to opt out. We're going to tell you what you should watch." And it was the ultimate in arrogance, like a search engine that says, "Fuck you, we know more about what you want than you do, or what you should have. We're telling you this is bad for you." Or it's like you go to order food, and you order whatever it is, something unhealthy, and they replace it with a salad, and they say, "Fuck you, you fat fuck." You know, we were looking at you, and you should eat this instead. And that's actually something that would be healthy. What they're recommending is crap. It's content that is completely dead. The three big mainstream channels, Fox, CNN, and MSNBC, are dying. Their audience is dying. There's no future for them. There's no place in the future for them. They can't compete. And YouTube keeps on recommending crap like that. Superficial shit. If it is a truther, it's a controlled truther. It's somebody that they endorse, right? And so when people want to recommend something to me, if you have a valid way of increasing my access to new audience people, a way where I can get my channel in front of new people, because that's what I need. It's 100% what I need. And the people that watch my videos, some of them recommend. Most of you guys don't talk about my channel, recommend it, which is fine. It's your choice. But the people that do, they're pretty much ignored by their friends anyway, or whatever it is. So I'm capped. I'm like hard capped, right? Like I can't bring in new viewers, and the viewers I already have are maxed out, right? So I get a third of my income from the membership program, and it's not enough, right? So I would need to triple the membership program, double it at least, in terms of that, the number of members. And for all that, I need new people, and I need people who, I need lots of new people. So the ones who, it's a very small group of people, because my videos have evolved. And again, when I make videos for dumb people like I used to, for the masses, and they were specifically about Hollywood stuff and whatever it is, right? I mean, it's like play Freebird. It's this thing where that if you're a band and you got to play the same songs over and over again, from 20 years ago, and you've changed and grown, and there's sophistication in your music, but it no longer appeals to people. You see this all the time with musical artists and whoever it is. As you get better, your audience dwindles, because most people don't evolve and change, and they can't move conceptually to some higher level of consciousness. And so when you embrace some sort of like your own personal evolution, and then your evolution as an artist, as a creator, you end up like no longer being able to make the crappy, the blockbuster type of movies and things that are more for that have a much bigger potential audience. My potential audience is shrinking, right? And so there's a lot of issues that I have here. And it used to be supported not only by, the way that YouTube used to run, it used to also be supported by divinity, right? I had a YouTube channel for 10 years, and then all of a sudden one day it popped, and it exploded. And there was all this energy behind it, and the growth of the channel was, self-evident. And I don't know if some of that's just to protect me, because staying under the radar is just better for me. I don't know. In the long run, I don't know. I don't it's none of these things, but I've done everything that I know that I can. The few other ideas that I have that I haven't been able to implement, and that would be going like old school, taking out like a billboard, or doing something like that, trying to get people to find out about my channel through some kind of old school media marketing or something. And I'm not, I don't know anything about that. I'm not a business person. And so, my wife and I have talked about these different ideas and things, but formulating them and making them into a reality. I'm willing to pay for customer acquisition if it leads to, it has to be profitable. Like I have to, if you're paying for advertising, then it has to turn into money, right? It has to, turn into some sort of form of more membership, people doing more members, more, ad revenue. And so, for YouTube, I think I could have paid, I thought, and I don't know for sure, like I don't have a way of calculating this, but I thought $1 per subscriber would be at least my audience would grow and it wouldn't cost me any money in the long run. Like I wouldn't lose any money if it was $1 subscriber. But YouTube sucks so bad. I was paying like $5 per subscriber. I wasn't even getting subscribers, so it was almost like I don't think my ads generated any new subscribers. If you heard about my channel through my ads, and you're still here, leave a comment. Like and everyone who does that, leave a comment, right? And so we could figure out how many people are still here from my ads. Whatever amount of money I paid, it was probably like $500. I don't know, maybe a little bit more. So it was just me throwing away money for YouTube to suck at, what they're supposed to be good at. Like they have a business of running ads and delivering customers to people. And if they suck so bad that and you hand pick your audience and say, look, just run it on these channels. I mean, if they had done that, I would still probably be running ads, right? Because it would be running on the channels that would most likely lead to people coming to, my channel. But that would be limited as well because those people had limited audiences. And a lot of those people already know about my channel because they have already watched Truth or Content, right? And so either way, I'm hard capped. And on top of all of that, YouTube is just paying less money per ad. They've just fucked everybody, like not just truthers. And so YouTube is like become a ghost town in that sense. And so someone recommended Rumble. And I've looked at Rumble before and it doesn't look like an alternative. But I just opened up a Rumble account and I went to upload one of my videos and it said they have to be smaller. And so all the videos that I've made, I can't upload them right now. And I'd have to make smaller videos for a place that I'm not monetized yet. So I have to learn all about Rumble and all these things. And, short videos that get more views don't generate more ad revenue than my longer videos. Like that's the best format. And I have to make content every day because the videos that they come out the first day, they get the most views, right? And I used to have videos that would get picked up and then they would start getting like lots of views. And I had a few videos that did that, but not like they used to. They got up to 15,000, 20,000 views. And they would grow like over a week-long period. And they would generate lots of, views and income. Not like I said, not in the days when I used to get 100,000 million views. But for the most part, a video makes money the first day. And then every day after that, it's less. Unless, some people find some video and it gets like a second run, which just doesn't happen anymore. So if I make a video every other day, I make almost as much as I need to on that one day. But the next day I don't make, I make a fourth of that. And so any day that I don't have a new video up is a day that, and then it just becomes too much content for people to keep up with and it fucks the algorithm. So, I'm kind of boxed in and hemmed in. And this is going to be something I have to deal with, like I said, coming up in January. After Christmas, the ad revenue plummets and YouTube starts getting more restrictive because they don't need all these channels out there, right? Because YouTube is paying for all these large video files. I mean, it's got billions of videos out there that nobody watches. They're just housed on YouTube's servers. And that costs YouTube money. Like they have all this, terabytes of, millions of terabytes of data that they have, all these dead videos that nobody watches. And all these channels where people put up videos for like 5 family members to watch. And, they just, so many videos like that nobody ever watched ever. And YouTube has to pay for it. It's the downfall of YouTube. It's their big expense. And it costs, electricity and money to keep this, these videos that are worthless videos up, right? And so they've kind of realized that the model is never going to work. And so housing all these videos that people, for the most part, all these videos that are, I got all these videos that are privatized because YouTube's policies changed and I had to privatize all my old videos, right? And these videos are just sitting there taking up space. And YouTube realizes that, so It doesn't want, it wants these long format videos that can run a lot of ads on them. But then a day after the video's up, it becomes useless to YouTube because people have moved on to something else. And so there's lots of problems here. Like it's unsustainable. And my situation personally is unsustainable here. And so unless there's some, idea out there how I can draw people to my channel, I'm not very self-promotional. I'm not a networker. I've done what I can do, like what I'm capable of doing. And so, like, other than that, I don't know how to get my videos out in front of new people and bring in more long-term audience members. And it's just, like I said, everything that I've tried has been blocked to one extent or another. And so my audience is basically shrinking over time and not growing. And it's right now it's to the point where I'm not making enough money to continue what I'm doing here, right? Like I just, so all these things have to be taken into consideration as I move forward. I want to talk about my health, but I'm better now. Like I have a little bit, one of the tonsils is swollen, but I have that kind of regularly. But, I don't feel sick at all. And so that went by the wayside. I had some more things to say about that, but I just want to move on. Let's get into the other things here. Okay, so this is what I was talking about here. So today's Thursday, December 12th. I just put a video up last night with all this information that was revealed about Luigi Mangione. And this search is specifically for stuff that's been put up in the last 24 hours. And so I turned on the news this morning when I ate breakfast. There was no reference to this anymore. Like what used to be the lead story to the news yesterday is now buried, and there's no more information to divulge, right? So they've kind of rolled out everything that they're going to roll out. So these are the most recent videos. 11 most shocking details from Luigi Mangione's manifesto. Luigi Mangione's conditions in jail. What's cooking in prison? Breakfast, fruit, grits, bread. Lunch, porcupine, meatballs, potatoes, bread, fruit. Dinner, mac and cheese, pasta, or something, pasta, I guess, bean casserole, tomatoes, and broccoli. So that's all of his, these are what they're saying now. Was Luigi Mangione framed? Social media circulates theories despite New York PD evidence. Inside the CEO killing suspect's wealthy family history, we showed that yesterday. So this is where it sort of dried up, right? Because there was the event that everybody saw, right? Now they have this. Murder suspect Luigi Mangione, he's a new lawyer. And so they're starting to make fun of it. Classmates of shooting suspect Luigi Mangione recalls his time on the robotics team, right? And so this is where interest is faded. So they rolled out this dramatic event where a guy shoots another guy in New York City. And then they show the shooter with a mask on, riding his bike and, traversing the areas in New York City, various photos, various things, right? This was the, we got to catch this guy phase. There's a guy out there, we're going to catch him, right? And that wasn't going to last forever. And so they rolled out more and more pictures and more interest. And then there was the people on the internet who were thinking this guy was some sort of modern day Robin Hood, right? Here's more of the stuff here. And then they catch him in McDonald's. And so they have the footage of him being arrested. They are being brought into court there where he acts out. His lawyer emerges. And then they start releasing all the evidence. He has a gun on him that wasn't the gun that they originally said he used, but then it became the gun he used, and that was the ultimate. The gun that he was on him matched the forensic evidence matched the bullets, right? And then he had a to-do list, and then they rolled out a manifesto. He had the clothing from the wherever he was, right? And he had a procedure where the healthcare issues were something to do with his spinal cord damage, and then all the other things that went with it, a rich family. And then they rolled out his background, whatever stuff he had, social media. They showed him giving his valedictorian speech. And then it's done, right? They have enough evidence. They've convicted him in the court of a public opinion. There's some resolution to the story. The guy certainly did it from everything that they're showing you, all the evidence that they're presenting to you. So the story's basically over and people move on to something else. Maybe there'll be a trial and some, breaking news coming up. He'll be extradited to New York. They'll do another day of whatever that is, these little bits and pieces. But people don't care about it anymore, right? It's this stuff that happens. It's the needing to be stimulated, the flashy object, the squirrel, where people consume information. It's, there's very, what do they call it, low value calories, empty calories. It's empty calories. And nothing ever happens to change it. People just bounce around from the next story. It happens here in the truth community. It happens with all the media stories where there's something that people are interested in. There might be people who get obsessed with it. They get into it. They can't get enough of this guy and his story. There are people who are suffering health care issues. He's a hero to them, whatever. But the majority of people move on. But there's no evolution. There's no personal growth. People bouncing around with whatever flashy, shiny object that's put in front of them, whatever story of interest there is, trending story. And nothing ever happens because of it. The people themselves are pacified. It's the video game internet, information era where a lot of information's out there. It's all basically useless information. Because in this case, it looks completely faked and contrived and staged. And so what good is it to see it? Like, you're not going to change any of that. It's not going to be exposed. You're like, oh, now we gotta tell everybody the truth, and we know that doesn't work, right? We got to tell everyone what's really going on here. Well, that doesn't, it's just that ship has sailed long ago. And so it's just the next story. And so for me making videos about something, I make videos, I give my opinions about it. People are whatever, and whatever helps them or not. But they're, the bigger things that I present here are the spiritual truths and the overall understanding of a system that's, a delinquent system that needs to collapse. And, what do we do after that happens? Like, what do we do as people to prepare for the material effects of a collapsed system? And more importantly, building something better in the future, right? Pockets of the future. And so a few things here we'll get to, like this is just his lawyer.
Time. And obviously you are dealing with this, your other cases as well in court today. The NYPD...
Wait, let's just say his name here.
Dickey. He is the defense attorney.
Some Dickey, what's his name?
Dickey. He is the defense attorney for
Dickey?
Luigi Mangione. And Thomas, I appreciate
Thomas
your
Dickey?
time. And obviously...
This fucking guy, like, they have hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, and this is their guy?
You are dealing with this, your other cases as well in court today. The NYPD commissioner tonight is announcing that the gun that your client had on him when he was arrested in Pennsylvania at that McDonald's, they are saying that specific gun matches the 3 shell casings at the scene of the murder in New York. What's your response to that from the New York NYPD commissioner tonight?
Yes, Aaron, thank you for having me, first of all. Aaron, I still haven't seen that evidence. Lawyers need to see evidence. Those saying you have something and getting that admitted into court are 2 different things. In fact, so what we're talking about is fingerprint evidence and some ballistics. Those 2 sciences in and of themselves have come under some criticism in the past relative to their credibility, their truthfulness, their accuracy, however you want to do it. So that's why, as lawyers, we need to see it. We need to see how do they collect it, how much of it matches. I don't want to get too...
So it's really whether the kid says he's innocent. Like, he didn't shoot the guy, because that's the first part. Because if he's going to say that, it doesn't matter, right? This is why they want dead people, because they just present these circumstantial evidence. It doesn't have to go to trial, right? So in the past, this is why they have to control everything and everybody about these stories, because, if the story's bullshit or it's just made up or it didn't really happen or, any number of possibilities that we believe here in the truth community, like any number of different narratives than the one that they're giving you, as long as the guy's dead, they can say whatever they want and people can confront it and prove, say this isn't factual and show you, how their story is bullshit. It doesn't matter because the story will go down in history as the story they're presenting. and everyone thinks this guy did it, right? Based on what's happening, in terms of the narrative, in terms of the show, you're watching a movie, something fictional. They've presented enough evidence that this guy did it, right? But there could always be some sort of twist in a movie or TV show, and they could say, well, that was deep faked or whatever. They're getting into those kind of plot lines and storylines. But the bottom line is, none of this really fucking matters, right? And you've got a lawyer that's Thomas Dickey, who's very unimpressive, right?
Technical, but fingerprints, they go by ridges, different things like that. And then we would
What ethnicity is Dickey?
have our experts. We would have experts take a look at that, and then we would challenge its admissibility and challenge the accuracy of those results.
So, when you mention it's the ballistics, but also the fingerprints, when you're talking about fingerprints and the ridges on the fingerprints, you just mentioned specifically, the NYPD does say those fingerprints match the fingerprints, your client's fingerprints match the fingerprints on the water.
I mean, why don't you ask him, if you're a real journalist, ask him why the fuck your client dropped a water bottle and a burner phone at the scene of the crime. Why did he have a to-do list about the criminal stuff that he was going to do, right? Why did he put a manifesto out there? Why did he do all these things? Because, it doesn't make sense. Like, I can understand the manifesto because that's, this is what the CIA does. That's a profile they release. If the guy wanted to make a point. But why would the guy run if he's going to incriminate himself? Why would the guy go on have an escape plan that involved leaving evidence that they were going to catch him on at the scene of the crime?
Bottle and that Kind bar near the murder scene.
So he dropped the wrapper of a Kind bar with fingerprints on it. He had a Kind bar. He was hungry after shooting the guy. He had a big bike ride ahead of him, so he wolfed down a Kind bar. Instead of putting it in his pocket and disposing of it somewhere else, he left it right next to the dead body.
So is what you're saying that you're not sure that the methodology that they're using or the company that or however that they're matching those fingerprints, you're not confident in that?
Well, I'd have to see it. I mean, anybody can, if they're going to use it, of course they're going to say that. But you have to see things. And that's why, people
see something, say something.
To keep an open mind. And, we would get our day in court and we would get that evidence. We can examine that evidence and challenge it, all the way.
At this point,
would do so.
He's very sharp.
Client said anything to you? Or, are you disputing that he was in New York City?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into any communications between my client and I. That's not proper. And again, if and when formal charges are filed, no question that my client would indicate a plea of not guilty.
No question that so you're sure it'll be a not guilty plea.
Is he saying he's guilty?
Do you know when you're going to
get? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah, the burden of proof is always on the government, okay? So, again, people forget that he and any other person charged with a crime is presumed innocent. That means we start off square one with a presumption of innocence of him being innocent. And the rest then follows, and then we challenge the evidence and contest it and battle it out in court where it belongs.
Right. Well, it's...
Okay, so they did get a star here for the amount of money the family has. This guy looks like the kind of guy that got off like a bumper sticker or something, right? Like the lawyer from Saul, the Better Call Saul lawyer from the show, and the Breaking Bad in his spin-off series. But Saul was a lot sharper, like more energy and all these things. So again, we'll see how this story disappears. It'll come back up, and there'll be some other resolution. They'll convict him or not, or he'll die in jail or whatever happens, right? And, the rest of this will just disappear like so many of these other stories because they're meaningless. There's no bearing on anything. And unless they take away some of your rights, it's the what happens afterwards, like the stuff that's done afterwards in terms of your ability to print a 3D gun or something like that disappears or whatever it might be. They'll get rid of things or they won't. They'll try to, or, will be successful or not. But other than that, these things have no bearing. Speaking of no bearing, let's go to the ladies at The View.
New details are emerging about Luigi Mangione, the man
Mangione.
charged in the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The suspect came from a wealthy family, was a high
It looks like, like some kind of a stock photo here.
from a wealthy family, was a high school valedictorian, Ivy League college student who
Yeah, we know all about that stuff. Let's get into the opinions of these wonderful View brilliant minds here. This is what I was making reference to in the beginning of this video. Because I'll spend so many hours, making the videos. I've made 2 videos. I mentioned this guy in an earlier video. I wasn't really covering it. Then they busted him. And I made 2 videos that were mostly focused on this, right? And so the videos are 4 hours long, total 2 videos of 2 plus hours, almost 5 hours in content. And I've made these videos and they have his name in the title. And people are interested to whatever extent. And that interest is fading fast, right? And then it'll just be like, oh, remember that guy? The video will be basically a dead video. And that's what happens when you cover news stories or any of these topical events. People lose interest in them in a very short period of time. And then there's other stuff in there of value that I've put in there, philosophical things, spiritual stuff, whatever it might be. But it's not going to be seen because the main topic is basically jumped the shark, right? And just all these, empty calories and this squawk box, right? This is the epitome of the View ladies, right? Who just verbalize their opinions every day. Their opinions suck. They're meaningless. And dumb people who are low consciousness watch this show and many shows like it. And it's just, people, this is all the zombification of the American public, right? Who no longer do anything. They just stare at shit, right? People just stare at shit, bump into things, right?
Reminder that criminals or people who do harm don't fit into any one box. I think we're so quick to stereotype people. Right. You expect a certain socioeconomic level or a certain education background. The thing I'll say is this: listen.
Anybody can be a criminal now. Anybody can be a terrorist. That's one of the takeaways. So that's something that's out there. Like this is setting a precedent for people who are successful, no criminal background, appear to have no real reason to be doing the crimes that they're doing, but do them anyway.
And first and foremost, the tragedy is that this man, who's a husband, a father, a son, was killed. It's also a tragedy that an incredibly promising 26-year-old man went so astray that he committed this heinous crime. And
again, you don't know if he committed it. Again, they're talking about this like he's already been convicted. Like Dickie was saying, you guys didn't listen to Dickie? You guys don't pay enough attention to Dickie. You guys need more Dickie in your life. What Dickie was saying was, his lawyer was saying, is that he hasn't even seen the evidence, and people can just say they have the evidence, right? Like, that's everything that you hear on the internet and on TV is other people saying they have something that they could show you a picture of what they have, right? But everything can be faked. Like, you have no idea. Everything can be staged. We live in a world that's already illusionary, and then we have our own illusionary subworlds of the internet and cinema and TV shows and things that seem very real but aren't, right? And so this guy hasn't been convicted. But they present all the information that they say they have, and that would lead you to think that this is a slam dunk, right? Because they say so, and they're the authority. And so for people who believe in that, sure, but everyone else is like, fuck you. We don't trust you or believe in what you're saying. Well, regardless of how much proof that you say that you have, you're not trustworthy.
Listen, I'm going to defer to the authorities, but they sort of alluded to, he might be this big healthcare crusader of some sort. That may be the case. He did seem to have a manifesto, but
he did seem to have a manifesto.
Someone who is a high-functioning, high-performing person who people only really had good things to say about. Until about 6 months ago, it sounds like he basically disappeared. His family wasn't in touch with him. To me, it symbolizes more likely there was some kind of a mental health break, and that he may have acted
Good.
in...
So now they've convicted him already, and this fucking dope who is like a former Republican, I don't know what she is. She does like, she's a political, she works in the world of politics, right? And this dope who has no credentials is now diagnosing him with a mental illness. So first, he's a convicted murderer, even though they just caught him 2 days ago. The thing only happened 2 weeks ago. You know, wherever he was before, no one would say that about this guy. And now this person that we just found out about 2 days ago, she knows that he's a convicted murderer because the people have told her all the evidence. And on top of that, she's clearly seeing that he's mentally ill. You know, like, she's just said this guy's crazy murderer, and with information she's never met the guy, it has no credentials to say either of those things.
An extreme way because he wasn't treating something that came on suddenly. That's my speculation,
Yeah.
but that's what I sort of suspect from the facts.
Of course, Ted Cruz has to politicize it and say that it's a left-wing thing. I mean, I
Ted
think
Cruz, Jesus Christ.
it was the second attempted assassination on Trump.
Like the ghouliest elf of all. She's the most ghoulish elf of all time.
Was a kid who was a registered Republican, who also voted for Biden and had a lot of left-wing stuff on his social media. But I don't think that this is, as you say, it's not a political issue.
No.
And why does Ted Cruz insist on
Just
dividing
Ted Cruz. Let's throw Ted Cruz into here for some no apparent reason.
Americans even further, is my question to him. Another point, these ghost guns are up for discussion at the Supreme Court right now. So let us hope that they do
It's crazy that they're up for discussion at the Supreme Court at the very time there's a prominent story about them.
the right things because, let me say, they do not have serial numbers.
No,
Yeah.
they're ghost guns.
Yeah.
They're ghost guns. Let's get rid of them. Let's get rid of these motherfucking ghost guns. We just found out about 10 days ago or 2 days ago. And now it's like, hey, let's get rid of them. Hey, the Supreme Court, it's conveniently right up there for that thing. We don't want people printing their own guns, unregistered, known guns like this. Because, CEO killers and shit.
They are sold online as do-it-yourself kits. What type of country are we living in?
Yeah.
That some nutcase can get a gun that has no serial number that he can make the same way that he can text me? Come on.
Yeah. Well, I think that.
Come on, that's so fucking crazy. Come on.
The Supreme Court is about to do it, to rule on this because Biden has a whole thing going on to
I'd like to
control this.
follow
Wait,
up
let me
with
just
you
say
on that,
I just
yeah.
want
It's
one-
amazing the coincidence of these two things happening at the same time. It's crazy. You might think that this could be a possible conspiracy if you weren't brain dead dopes.
But I'm hoping that Roberts and Barrett will go with the other Supreme Court justices, Ketanji Jackson and Elena Kagan and Smith Sotomayor.
Yeah.
That they will all vote against this type of thing to save this country. Come on.
You got to save the country from ghost guns. I mean, ghost guns, we just found out about it, but I know that they're going to bring down this country. People will be running around with ghost guns doing the kind of things, bicycles, and leaving kind bar wrappers at the scene of the crime and going into McDonald's with all the evidence on them, with it wearing a mask that everyone would recognize them in. This kind of thing. It's going to take down America. These ghost guns, we got to get rid of the ghost guns.
I
Okay.
was going to bring up the ghost guns because, I think it's all speculation now as to why someone so young, so promising, would do something like this. There's some indication that he was also suffering from chronic back pain.
Exactly. We heard about it just yesterday. He had back pain. I mean, chronic back pain can make you print out a ghost gun and go kill a CEO. I mean, just what happens. Even though your life is going a certain direction, and you're a certain kind of person, and everybody says you're this great person, and then just one day your back hurts and you're killing CEOs with ghost guns and shit.
Severe chronic back pain. And
Who hasn't?
So
Everyone has
Who hasn't? That's no excuse. I have 3 back pains right now.
back pain.
Yeah, so we're not sure. We're not sure why this happened, but we do know the instrumentality that was used, and it was a ghost gun that can.
It was a ghost gun. I mean, it wasn't a regular gun. It was a ghost gun, and it disappeared. Right? It was Casper the Friendly Ghost Gun.
printed on your computer, and I think what is so frustrating to me
Printed on your computer. That's how ghost guns work.
is that you have all these lobbyists lobbying and saying that this is not a firearm. It obviously is a firearm because a man was killed using
But you use it exactly. Now it's clearly a firearm. Before it was just a ghost gun, but now it has real life consequences.
one of them.
Yep.
And it is going to be in front of the Supreme Court. But in recent years, their use, these ghost guns, proliferated. I would say they are linked to nearly 700 homicides since between 2016 and 2021. I mean, that is crazy. That's a tenfold increase.
Tenfold increase. It's crazy. The ghost guns are, 700 people out of 300 million. It's just crazy amount. I mean, before you know it, there'll be no people left. There'll just be a bunch of ghost guns laying around, and all the people will be wiped out from the world. Death by ghost gun.
The Supreme Court is looking at whether or not it is considered a firearm. Of course it is. And
Of course it is.
I agree with you. I think, when you have something that someone can make in their home, and you have the lobbyists saying, but no, and the gun manufacturers saying, these are just hobby guns. And so,
Why would they say that? Well, how are they making money? I mean, the people who are selling the guns, hobby guns, what does that mean?
they shouldn't be regulated. It says a lot about our
They don't
country.
even have
It says a lot about, we got to regulate everything. We got to make rules. Come on. All the rules. I mean, you get guys running around with back pain and fucking CEOs, killing CEOs with ghost guns and kind wrappers and then manifestos. So come on.
I think that there is a shock in finding out who it is, just because this man could have changed things in this world. He had every privilege that could be given to someone ever. He came from a wealthy family.
He had all the privileges. This guy could have been he was full of white privilege.
Highly educated, valedictorian of his class. All the things were there.
Well, those aren't privileges. That's like takes work and shit. Like that. Those things aren't privileges. Yeah, going to the school and having a rich family, that's a privilege. But becoming valedictorian, that's something that you earned. That wasn't a privilege.
A very smart person, and yet this is the option he chose rather than going into a system and truly changing the ills and problems.
Okay,
And
you can't change this fucking system. Why hasn't, you're saying that a person with money and privilege and intelligence and abilities could change the system, then why hasn't the system been changed? Why does the system just keep getting worse and people getting worse? Like, just admit everything's going to shit, right? People are much worse, and the system is much worse, and the attitude and the emotions and the mental illness, the only thing that's getting better is our stuff in terms of technological advancement. The stuff is getting better, but everybody is getting worse. The system's degraded, the hatred, the anger, the economy, all these things, the debt. You think that this guy could have changed that? Why hasn't anybody else changed it? You think that everybody's making bad choices and that's the reason why the system hasn't changed? You can't change this fucking system. Doesn't matter how privileged you are, how gifted you are. The system is corrupted. Like, just fucking admit it, right? This guy could have changed the world, but instead he bought a ghost gun. He printed out a ghost gun. He got on a bike with a kind bar and a water bottle and a burner phone. He shot the guy, dropped his evidence there. He ran away, rode his bike away, even though he has severe back pain and his white privilege and his freaking rich family. And he went on multiple buses, ended up in Pennsylvania, and one day went to McDonald's wearing a mask so people could recognize him with all the evidence in his backpack, and dropped a manifesto. I mean, the guy could change the world, but he did this instead.
I think there's so many massive problems with the insurance companies. That is clear, and we all know it. It is almost like a criminal racket. It
is a criminal racket, okay? It's just not illegal, so it's criminal. It's immoral, it's obscene, and it's unnecessary. It's a parasite on an already parasitic, money-making healthcare system that's like the worst kind of healthcare system. And so you got bad healthcare, and then the insurance companies that make money off of the bad healthcare and prevent you from getting the healthcare from the bad system, right? It's completely fucked. And so don't pretend that this kid could have changed that in any capacity.
Never the answer to that, and I'm actually more surprised by people's continual response to this. From TikTokers to...
TikTokers, the fucking TikTokers love the ghost guns, and people shoot CEOs in the face.
Professors, podcasters. You can have all the rage in your heart at a system and still know that to pinpoint and put a target on the back of a human that is so far removed from fixing the problem. He may be a millionaire. You may hate people with money, all the things. You have to reflect on yourself if you at any point...
She's just dropping this wisdom here. Look at her drop the wisdom. Look at the big Pfizer dick right here of a dildo. And so, just silly shit, right? Like, this is what I'm talking about, empty calories. The story itself is just fake as fuck, or doesn't make any sense, contrived, whatever it is. It's part of the show. Like, it just doesn't make sense. With all these plot falls, all these things that don't make sense. They only make sense because when you write a fictional story, and you see this more and more with TV shows and movies, I have a couple things I want to talk about at the end of this video. I saw a few little disturbing things on Netflix. Hopefully I'll remember. If not, I'll do it in my next video. And so when you like have these, whatever it is, you have an agenda. Your agenda is feminism or some kind of woke crap or some kind of Republican stuff or whatever. You have an agenda-driven story. And you're going to write the story or the screenplay or whatever it is, the content, around the fact that you're pitching the agenda. And so the agenda is going to shape the way the story is told. And if your agenda is bullshit, if your agenda is getting rid of ghost guns, right, well, then there has to be some kind of element. Like if your agenda is to push for more surveillance cameras and to get rid of ghost guns, then you have to make the narrative fit into that scenario. And so the guy has to escape on a bike and go through the city and escape somehow. And he has to use a ghost gun, which they're going to have to find on him later on. And then they're going to have to be able to pin the crime on him, so he's got to leave DNA evidence and a manifesto and some other things that are necessary to make this story work, right? And so this is just bad storytelling. They're saying stories are the foundational building block of a person's moral fabric and their personalities. Our stories are everything. We think in story form, right? Everything that we look at, it's like a TV show now, but it used to be, before that in the story form. Your life is a story and your day is a story. You tell stories about your trip to this thing, going out shopping, and somebody cut you off in traffic, and what's going on today. And people put their stories on social media, story this, story that, right? And the stories that they're putting out there are like horrible. They're hogwash. They're stupid because they're 100% agenda driven. And the media, nobody calls bullshit on it, so they get away with it. But it's just, they're bullshit stories.
We're gleeful about this because it is so disturbing.
It's so disturbing because what? Like, what's disturbing? These this little coven of dopes still have a show with their symbolism, with the V and the whole.
The residual effect of how many people applauded this person as if this is how we live in this country.
You're just so outraged. I'm so outraged.
Or in this world, and it's unacceptable.
Okay, but you said as a criminal organization. So which is worse? The healthcare insurance racket and the healthcare industry, the pharmaceutical industry that kills 250, the medical system that kills 250 people, 250,000 people a year, or whatever it is, right? But 250,000, I think. And, all the people that suffer from our medical system. And then all the people that get defrauded by the insurance company. Or one guy getting shot. Like, which is worse? By a ghost gun. Which is worse? The system itself that causes pain and suffering and misguides people, misleads them, and helps them, pushes them in the wrong direction, makes them weak and dependent and unhealthy and unable to live a valid life. Often makes them mentally ill. The side effects of the drugs. I mean, how many people have died from side effects of pharmaceutical medications or committed suicide from suicidal ideation? It's one of the side effects, right? What's worse, that whole big systemic problem, or one crazy kid who used to be a valedictorian and then went south, gets a ghost gun and shoots a CEO? Like, which is more outrageous, the healthcare system or the people who are applauding this guy for doing something that has no real value? I'm killing this guy is going to do nothing. United Health is still going to screw people over, right? This is not going to change anything. But in terms of what people see, other people see, they see this corporate evil corporation and this evil systemic healthcare issues, and the insurance being part of it, and the pharmaceuticals being another, and doctors being another, the government being another, the financial institutions being another. And these, evil organizations, and then somebody doing something like a small little gesture of a fuck you to these organizations, and that's what you're outraged about? That this ghost gun carrying valedictorian?
People who are going to make changes that are needed to our system are not the ones who do it this way and do it violently. It's the ones who are doing the hard work of activism, of lobbying members of Congress.
Okay, so the lobbying, you need more money. You know what? Let's talk about lobbying. What do you need? You need money. And ordinary people who are, broke because of they're not getting paid enough money, and because of inflation, and because even if they had money, it wouldn't be billions of dollars that these corporations and these insurance companies make. And so lobbying politicians, is that what you're saying would have worked? Why hasn't it worked yet? It hasn't worked once. In the history of any kind of these lobbying movements, they did some sort of scientific polling and or not polling, but they did research into this. And what I'm going to say, like, I could go find the research, but I don't need to because it's going to make total sense. And that is that every time that there is a political issue, some kind of bill being passed or law being passed, the side with the money on it wins. The more money, the side that's richer, whatever the dispute is, wins every fucking time a bill is passed, a law is passed. The people that have special interest, the lobbying groups' money wins every time. And that makes total sense. I don't even need to say it. We could just assume that to be true. You don't need to do a study on that. And so ordinary people don't have money. You know who has money? Insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies. So to say that this kid could have done something by lobbying and doing the hard work, like this freaking dopes in there, and the big pharma dildo sitting there. Talk about the people that pay your bills, the insurance companies. I'm sure insurance companies run plenty of because this is watched by old people, right? These news programs. And so what do old people, what are the sponsors of shows that are for old people? Well, it's big pharma, it's insurance companies, it's Medicare and these things, right?
Talking to their state and local officials. And I feel like it detracts from actual work.
That's never happened. Well, why is the insurance companies getting worse? Why are they making more money? Why is big pharma making more money? I mean, if you're going to say it's hopeless, which I would agree with, you can't change it. Say we can't change shit. And then you say, well, then you're going to occasionally you're going to have someone who gets so frustrated they act out like this, right? I mean, whatever truth there is to this story. But just admit you can't change shit. Like, you just got to eat shit and you got to just, take all this stuff. Just, thank you, sir, may I have another, right? Like, that's all you can do. Thank you, sir, may I have another?
We now consecrate the bond of obedience. Assume the position.
Thank you, sir, may I have another? Thank you, sir, may I have another? Thank you, sir, may I have another?
Show me one example of any corporation, anything that's politically legislated, any kind of evil corporation scam that's going on there that was able to be changed, that was able to be, that normal people, average people were able to win, like David versus Goliath type of situation. Show me an example. I'm not talking about some lawsuit where they have to sprinkle a few of their crumbs and pay people off, which occasionally happens, almost never. But where something was actually changed, where something evil and some evil corporation or governmental agency or war or whatever it is, whatever bad thing is happening by powerful groups has been changed by average people. It doesn't happen, right? It never fucking happens. When there's a revolution, like what do you think's going on in Syria? The Syrian people, with help from other powerful agencies like Israel and America and these other groups, and lots of money, have overturned and got rid of Assad. Again, it wouldn't have happened without external intervention. But what's happening to that country now? Is it going to be better? No, it's going to be worse. It's going to be worse for 50, 60 years. Like, it was already bad there, but then they're talking about how bad that guy is, but it's going to get worse. We've seen it. When there's regime change, no matter how bad the fucking dictator was, whatever comes next is always worse. It's thug rule, disorganization, and chaos, and people suffer. They don't have the same level of lifestyle. There's no organization to keep the system going. So if you took down the American government and the American system, collapsed the economy, what do you think would happen to the electrical system and the food system and all of it? What would happen? People would go chaos, would go full ape shit and go into their grocery stores and buy toilet paper like they did on, and canned goods. And before you know it, there'd be no food. People starving. They start eating each other. Like it happens like really quickly. We might see it. We probably will see it, right? Where people will be turning to cannibals within a week or two after a systemic collapse. And that's how quick it can happen, right? And so other than something like that that's going to make things worse, there's no power group that gets taken down and replaced by a better, pristine system. It's never happened. So stop talking about like you can work the system and affect change. It's never happened. It's not happened one fucking time. Things just keep on getting worse in terms of the corruption and the evil. And, there used to be some lawsuits and things, and, there was stuff there was some power within the citizenship, and, protests made a little bit of a difference, back in the 60s. But they closed that shit up, right? It was effective for a small period of time. That guy, Ralph Nader, they started suing companies and things, legislating politicians. And what happened, just like with the internet, the powerful people just figured a way to block that shit, right? So you can have a little bit of small success until they stomp you out.
Work that's been done to try to change our healthcare system
when
and
you
make
hear
it better.
the
Try to change, but not change it.
of the healthcare system and how they really will deny more anesthesia that you need.
But one thing also, I do feel like the politicization that we jump into. So I actually, weirdly, I'm not feeling great. I went on a deep dive and read this gentleman's Twitter feed. It was eventually taken down. And he was.
By who? Who took it down? Why did they take his Twitter feed? This is from like 2 days ago. This was from when they first caught the guy. Right? So, yesterday or the day before this came out. So I'm getting to this late. They had already taken down who took down his Twitter feed. And because he's not a criminal yet, he's a suspected criminal. So why take down his Twitter feed? Immediately upon his arrest, he no longer has a voice and a place. Again, this is Elon Musk's Twitter. He was supposed to be the guy that was for free speech. Who took down? Did the government? Did the federal government take it down? Was it Elon Musk took it down? Who did? As soon as the guy is accused, not convicted of doing something, he says he's innocent. We haven't heard him confess to anything. Even if you do, he still hasn't been convicted. He doesn't have a voice. He's been deplatformed by the very act of somebody's, bunch of bullshit being said about him that may or may not be true, right? And so all of these things.
Somebody, he actually didn't fit into a political box. I think
blocks.
The FBI called him kind of a Marxist because of his manifesto, but he was listening to Andrew Huberman. He was a Joe Rogan fan, and he also liked the Unabomber. I think we're so quick to.
These are what's what we know about the guy. He liked Joe Rogan. He liked the Unabomber. He was kind of a Marxist. He put out a manifesto, for Christ's sakes, and he had a ghost gun. Well, who is this guy? Who is this mystery man that we're speaking of, with all these random facts we know about him? We don't even have a profile on this guy yet. All we know is he liked these different things, and we can't put him in a box. And he has ghost guns. He's a ghost gun guy.
To say, you must fit into this box and be all this, or you fit into this box and you're all that. And it's like, in all likelihood, this is a gentleman who was struggling with something, at some point went astray. His family wasn't in his life. And it is a tragedy because he could have been part of the solution.
Well, the man he killed, too.
He could have been part of the solution. There's no solution. Stop pretending there's a fucking solution. And that's everybody. Like everybody in the truth community. You're fucked. The system's fucked. It's going in the wrong direction. Each generation gets worse. The better our technology, the weaker and more pathetic that we become. It's idiocracy. People are stupider. They don't know how to live in the real world anymore. I mean, think about how bad people were. I think about how bad people were. I was born in the 60s. I grew up in the 70s. I was born in 1964. So I was 7 years old when the 70s rolled in. And so that's my childhood was, a little bit in the 60s, but I was completely unaware. When you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, I didn't know about the hippie movement. My brother was in Vietnam. My sister was a hippie. But I grew up in the 70s, the post-hippie, the post-Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was basically over. The hippie movement was crushed. And then there was just the 70s. And then things just got worse in the 80s. And, my understanding of people. And then you saw degradation coming in, right? Bill Clinton, banging, an intern in his office, getting caught lying and keeping his job. And the moral degradation just kept on setting in. There's multiple genders now. Has that made things better? Has that just made things more confusing? And if you look at the performance, how hard a kid is able to work now, how they're able to deal with losing, for example, every kid getting a trophy, all the things that have happened over time in terms of weakening and the whole thing with the internet and having, more of a cyber life and not real life and being more unnatural, and the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of morality, people no longer having the relationship with God, religion's getting more and more contaminated, more and more despicable, deplorable with their behaviors and the behaviors of the clergy, and just being more and more part of the problem and lying and deceitful and getting away from the primary teachings that made the religion into something, when Jesus was alive, for example, right? How Christianity was when Jesus was alive and where it is now. It's just like everything else. So it's going in the wrong direction. People are not evolving. They're getting worse, right? Maybe in small pockets you have people evolving, but it's not because of the system. It's because they're able to exclude the system from their life and push back against the system in some way and carve out some spiritual sovereignty and move forward personally, right? And so this idea that the system can be saved and it can be fixed and that people can evolve in some ways within the system and change things is silly. We're going in one direction, and that's downward. We're going in a direction where everything's getting degraded. And so the system itself should have collapsed years ago because the debt, are we getting into more debt or less debt, right? Are we going in a positive direction or negative direction? Is Social Security going to be here in 2 years or 4 years or 5 years? How are they going to pay for Medicaid? What wars are going to be there? We're going to be in World War III, or what's going to happen in terms of something positive? Show me like a path to, other than some imaginary idea of things getting better, a positive way in which people can evolve and change, and the system can go in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. Like, show me any kind of a plan and how that plan could be executed, and it wouldn't be crushed by the evil powers that are pushing us in the wrong direction. And how, like, even if we paid off our debt, the system would collapse because that's our wealth, right? We have over $2 quadrillion in debt in America that would trade back and forth and pretend that it's worth something, that it's money. If you paid that off, you'd have no capital. You'd have no, buying power, spending power, because that's what's being spent is debt.
By the way, sorry, the man he killed, which he did not know, he just knew he was a CEO of a company. He was like not a face, not a name to him. That man had been quoted from employees within the company saying this was one of the guys that wanted to change things. So that's what you get.
What do you mean? You seriously? Like, Jesus Christ. A CEO of the biggest healthcare company that's known for not being a good company, doing evil shit, and that's how you grow. You're rewarded for being a piece of shit, narcissistic sociopath. That's the other problem. If you're a sociopath and narcissist, and you're selfish and you're egotistical, and you'll do well in this system. And if you're a company that has those policies, then you'll do even better, right? And so companies that break the rules, or at least straddle the rules, or change the rules themselves, just lobby Congress to change the rules, or politicians. But either way, when you do bad shit and you go about things and you do shortcuts and you don't care about how you make the money, just that you're making the money, and you're willing to hurt people and you're willing to do despicable things, you'll do really well in the system. It's a known fact. And this idea that this guy was CEO, well, he was going to change things. He was. I swear to God he was, right? He was a hero, and this guy just took him out. And now that he's dead, well, of course, healthcare is going to be bad. He was trying to change things. He was going to change things. They would fire him if he changed things, right? It's their low-level practices, their immoral and ethical practices that pay dividends. Everybody knows that, right? These people are just silly little freaking ignorant people that just go out there and say things to even stupider people. Like, just admit our system's fucked and there's nothing you can do about it. If you want to act out this way, you're just going to make more of a problem and more of a mess, because every time you act out in a way where there's a victim, they get to take away more of your rights. Now, ghost guns will be gone. I mean, we just found out about them, and now they're gone already. Ghost guns are going to be gone, and there'll be more surveillance cameras, because that's what they do. They take victim consciousness. They take the victim, this potential victim, this danger thing that now we have to worry about, and they take it away from you. Because what they're trying to do is control every aspect of your life so you don't act out. Because there's only two things that can happen. They run the system into the ground, or while they're running the system into the ground, people revolt and take care of them and get rid of them, right? Like, that's all that can happen. That's not going to fix anything. But in history, that's why the revolutions don't make things better, but they go and they kill a bunch of people that run the system, and people who run the system are trying to prevent that from happening. That's all this is about. They know that people will be pissed off at them, and if this thing is real or not, whatever the realness there is to this thing, it's a potential thing they don't want to have happen. Because they know the majority of people don't like them or don't care about them and blame them for everything. They're the so-called elite. The elite have gotten a bad name, and have always had people always had animosity towards the so-called elite, but now more than ever. And so, this is all people can do. They can't change the system, so all they can do is break the system or punish the people who are running the system. It's a few of them. Like, that's all that's ever going to happen. I'm not endorsing anything because I know that this is just going to run its course, and what I want to put emphasis on is, what are we going to do after this system collapses? How can we make it better? And it starts with having an internal relationship with God. And barely anybody, I was talking about this in the beginning of the introduction. I looked at my latest sitting that is on my Gratefullness meditation channel, and the sittings are getting better, and I just had this breakthrough because of the preceptor work. And there's 13 likes to the video and 70 views. And so more than likely, it's under 20 people there doing the Gratefullness meditation now, right? And so, like, everything is like, for me, it's a losing battle, like, on every level. I keep on chugging it along because I have no choice but to do that, because you don't know what the effects of something positive are. But something truly positive is outside the system altogether. And it stems with your internal relationship to the divinity within you.
When you take this kind of action, is you take out someone who literally recognized there was a problem. That it's disgusting. And
It's disgusting. So is that your summary? He recognized there was a problem. He was going to do something about it. You just took this guy out. This guy was a hero. He hadn't done anything yet. He had been a piece of shit. He was just making the company worse. But he recognized there was a problem. He was going to do. He was a good guy. He was going to make sure that the company that he was running wasn't going to make more profits off of denying people coverage, and he was going to lose money instead of gaining money. And the people that were in charge of his position, the board of directors, would have been totally okay with that, because he was a good guy, and they're all good people, and they care about people more than they care about money. That's why they have hundreds of millions of dollars, and they care more about how happy you are and what's going on with you. That's why they don't give you their money and put their money into helping people. They just hoard their fucking money. That's these guys that make tens and 20 millions of dollars of hurting people and taking advantage of people and make money off other people's suffering. Every once in a while, they have a moment where they become real people, and then they can affect change. You remember that story where that happened? No, you don't remember it because it never fucking happened. That's why. Because if this guy did have a moment where he felt, bad about it, he would have been fired immediately. Like, fucking, just what a silly little person.
Correct. His Twitter wasn't taken down.
I wanted to just say two things.
His Twitter wasn't taken down.
One, we're all trying to figure this out, but these are allegations still. There hasn't been a conviction, and I think we need to make that clear.
Yeah, but you not. Then why did you say anything about all this? All this stuff that you just said was predicated on that this guy was guilty, and that everything you had been told was true, even though you fact-checked none of it. Like, this is where they said that they fact-check everything. Well, you're given information by the mainstream media that says it's an authority, and it's not, by a government and a political system that lies to you, an intelligence community that lies to you. So this is completely fucked, and you just admitted. You just said a bunch of shit that would only be valid if it was true, right? Well, like, let's just throw this caveat in. This guy hasn't been convicted, and none of this stuff is really true yet. And even if it was true, he had been convicted, you can't believe any of it because it's a fuck system, and you guys are a bunch of dopes covering a fuck system and being gatekeepers and shills for its, the evil to continue. Okay, so I have opened a Rumble account, and it seems like it's already pre-monetized, and I'll be talking about this in the beginning of my next video. By the time you see this video, I might already have a video up on the Rumble account. It's called Pockets of the Future. I'll start putting a link in my, my description box of my videos. But, I'll see how it works. And if it's okay, I will end up doing that healthcare, my things I found out post-COVID. All this stuff I wanted to share about that. I'll do a series of short videos there, probably every other day, or maybe twice a week or something, and see, how that goes. Just to add a different place, it might solve some of the problems. I'll explain that more in my next video. So one of my viewers sent me this. This is one of these New Age women. She's talking about this stuff here.
The Council of Earth is a body of 12 beings who represent our planet, plus beings that represent the part of Earth that has already ascended called Pilche.
So then at the end, not sure why the person sent it, but this
Those
part
representing Earth
are
guiding humans who've not yet awoken. They are Paul the Venetian, Enoch, Gandhi, Peter the Great, and Thoth.
Thor.
Those who represent the ascended aspect Pilche are actively working for the ascension of the planet, and they are Babaji, Lady Portia.
So this saying Babaji, there's a Babaji that does what I do, but they're not the same person, right? There are a lot of these New Age people who are, I don't think this woman's like evil or manipulative. I just think I wouldn't say she's crazy, but, this is a lot of it's just imaginary. A lot of the stuff coming out of the New Age community are things that were put out there by either charlatans or, crazy people, or just people who thought they felt or heard something, and whatever it might be, some sort of, not truth. And then it becomes something that other people repeat. And then all these other people in the New Age community believe the same things. I was in this crystal shop in the North Carolina town, Asheville, which has these, it's got like 4 crystal shops I know of, these big, with big giant amethysts that are taller than me. They're like 7 foot tall. The geodes. They're worth thousands and thousands of dollars. And they have all these cool places, and it's a hubbub for New Age people. And there's an old guy sitting on a couch with, there's like some plush chairs there, like some comfortable chairs. And he was sitting with a young guy, and he was explaining all about aliens and New Age stuff. And I knew most of it was just bullshit, like stuff that I was hearing. And the young kid thanked him for it, but it was bullshit that I've heard before. And so they just repeat each other's bullshit, but it's not real spirituality. It's not really connecting internally to God. It's none of the things I talk about. A lot of your spiritual path, if you embrace your spiritual path, it's a grind. Oftentimes it's boring, or it's restless, or there's, difficult shit you got to go through. It's like anything else. If you want to, it's even more so like that. If you want to be successful, you have to just go through a lot of shit that's unpleasant. And it's not like these, these sort of spiritual experiences you have on drugs or something like that. That's some beautiful, whatever it is. A lot of it's just confronting the things inside of you that are blocking your spiritual path and getting those removed. And that's unpleasant oftentimes. This is how unicorns help you towards your, this is just like this, it's nice to hear for people, and it's, gives them something to hope for. It's like some magical world. There's no magic in spirituality. It's really tough work. And the more of a saint you are, the more bullshit you have to eat, and the more difficulty you have to go through, and the more, humble you have to be, and all that shit, right? And so these people who claim to be, etheric people, and they live in this magical world, and it just sounds so wonderful, and they can say everything can be just great and blissful, and there's no, there's no difficulties. They're just lying to you. Spiritual advancement comes through pain and suffering. And obstacles and things like this. And confronting your own bullshit, which is something these people can't do. And they just repeat goofy shit they heard from other people. So here she's talking about this guy, Bob Udgy. The guy that I talk about has an I here, so it's Bob Idgy. But here she is, Bob Idgy, the 12th dimensional master.
Always raises my frequency when I think of some of the great illumined ones.
Illumined ones.
And today we're going to focus on Babaji. Now, he was a 12th dimensional master.
Oh, wait. I think he's just 11th. He's a 12th dimensional master.
Utterly, totally beyond our comprehension.
See, the thing about all of this stuff is whether it's true or not, right? Is this actually true? Is this something? Here's the guy she's referring to here. Mahadavar. Oh, she's going to say he's a real...
He was known as a Mahavatar, a great avatar.
So an avatar is somebody... the avatar that's used in video games is a different understanding of the word that's used in ancient Indian spirituality. An avatar is somebody who's born in a high level of spiritual attainment, but they're not going to grow. They're not going to advance. They're not here for spiritual advancement. They're here because they need to, whatever level that they're on is to do a certain amount of work and then they leave. They're just here to perform some sort of, singular task, whatever that is. Like when Krishna came down was the Mahabharata, and it was to bring in the Kali Yuga. It was the end of these other spiritual periods. It was the end of dharma, duty, and these things. And so Krishna came in at a certain level, and he was the incarnation of Vishnu, right? And so, this is what they mean by avatars. And it's just not understood by people who live in these fantasy world. But any of this stuff, it just matters whether it's true or not. Like this guy was a 12th dimensional master, and there is such a thing as 12 dimensional masters. Well, sure, that'd be good what she's saying. But anything that's bullshit is problematic. It's not just problematic. It's like borders on evil, because you can make anything up in spirituality. But spirituality is without lies. It's without hype. It's without bullshit. It's without any kind of self-aggrandizement. You are wherever you are in your spiritual path, and whatever is the truth, right? In the material world, we can manipulate the truth and change things, based on people's beliefs. And I mean, we can do all those things, but we shouldn't mess around with the spiritual world that way. And people who are, like lightweights and just, they live in this fantastical world, this imaginary world, and they make up these different terms and these different aspects of these people and all these kind of thing like that. If it's not true, then it's really bad, because people start believing in it, and that causes damage to their spiritual side, which is much worse than any damage or any blockage that's put in your spiritual path. Is something you're going to have to deal with over lifetimes, and it's going to cause you, not only pain and suffering, but it's going to divert you from your true path, right? So anything that's to do with religion or any of these other things, I can see Bob Idgy here. Okay, so this is the fraud dodgy, right? This piece of shit here. For those of you guys who know what I'm talking about from my other videos. But Bob Idgy is with a U. I said I don't know why I said I, but when I spelled it, I'm like, that's not right. But Bob Idgy is this person here. And Bob Idgy was a simple, he was a babu or a clerk in a courtroom. And so he did whatever work that a clerk would do. They have a lot of paperwork in India. And because of his being a babu, they added G, a J-I. That's why his name is Ramchandra. And so his nickname comes from his job. So he worked as a clerk for many years. And then they added G to these people who are, G is a term of respect, right? Lalaji, Babaji, Charaji. And so Charaji is Parthasarthi Rajagopalachari, and his nickname was Chari. And they added G when he became the master. So his family called him Chari, his friends and whatever. And then when he became the master of the system, they added the G, right? And Lalaji was, I'm not sure where that came from. But he was also named Ramchandra. But these were like serious people who had jobs, and they weren't, being a guru wasn't their job. Babaji didn't ask anybody, he didn't take money from anybody. People donated to the mission, but all that money went to building ashrams. He lived a very simple life. You can see he had simple clothing. He lived in northern India. He had his father was a lawyer, and he was fairly wealthy. And there's Charji there, his successor. And he was gifted a house. He inherited a house with a courtyard, and people came from all the world to meet him. And he would have these people come to his house, and he would feed them, didn't charge them any money, and he would impart spiritual. Here he is. He smoked a hookah with tobacco, jaggery, and charcoal, and he really didn't eat that much. He was somebody who was, very simple, and just, people loved him because he emanated like love and concern and compassion for people. And he transmitted this energy and cleaned their hearts, and it was a service. And there was no talk about how great he was or what he was or these things. I mean, that stuff's there, but that's, superficial stuff. It's really about your experience of the person and how they can help you. So anyways, this is when people say like these different, new age type of things, it has nothing to do with what I do. These people are goofy, and like I have no respect for them. If what they're saying is the truth, that's great, but usually they're not. And, that's really up to them to figure out. So I want to talk about 2 shows here. I've been doing reviews, and people seem to like it and want me to do more of them. And so when I have the energy to do it, I will. So there was a Netflix show called Tomorrow and I. Now, Netflix and some of these other streaming services are starting to stream foreign countries' content. And my wife and I watched a German series, and I watched that one for Korea, the whole Squid Game thing. And, I've watched numerous other things and just bits and pieces of them. I watched an Indian movie, which I talked about, I think, very recently here. Yeah, like last week. And so, I like watching other cultures because, especially when they dub it, and if they dub it correctly, and just their facial expressions and things, people are not like Americans. Like, we're not, people think differently. They have a different orientation to life. And they express themselves in ways that we would never do. And they do it differently from each other, right? It's like each culture has these specific ways of interacting with reality. And it's quite interesting to me. I've noticed this with foreign films. Years ago when I took my first trip to India, there was this French guy, and he was acting as a secretary. He was on some sort of extended stay. I've seen him since. He's married now and has kids. His kid had hung out with, his daughter had hung out with my daughters. But years and years ago, he's kind of an obnoxious guy that people didn't like, but he got me in to see The Master of the System, and he was friendly to me. We had got along. And one time I was sitting there, and he asked me to come in, and they were playing a game called Carom with Master's grandson, Master Chargie's grandson, who grew up to be like seemed like a really nice young man, but he was kind of obnoxious as a kid. There's a game that's called Skittles or something like that had a little top, and it used to knock down bowling pins. We had, it was like a board game, it was made out of wood, and you pull a string, and this top would spin through these sort of maze, and you try to knock down these pins for points, right? And there's another game that we had that it was like a pool table kind of thing, and it was like pool with little rings. Like you hit the rings, like there's one white ring and red and black rings. I can't remember this. I played it when I was a little kid. But they had a game called Carom that was similar to that, where you were knocking things into these corner pockets, these side pockets. And the reason I'm telling this story is the kid pulled out this, it was like a catalog of board games. And they had a board game called Head of the Class. And he said, I want to be the head of the class. And it was the first time I realized that Indian kids took education so much more seriously than American kids. This is why there's so many jobs that people from foreign countries that do math. American kids don't like to do math and things like this because there's a lot of emphasis put on education in these other countries, where American kids take it for granted, and it's something like, oh my God, I got to go to school and all that shit, right? But in these other countries, because of the population and there's just limited spots, and they were told, it's emphasized by their parents, I mean, these kids are suicidal if they fail tests. I've talked about this in other videos. And so that shapes you in a different way. You have a completely different attitude towards, your education and money and all these things, right? Because of the population. And the fact is, if you mess up as a kid, you're like fucked for life. It's like that bad, right? And so I've talked about this. And so I was watching this show, and first I thought it was Chinese, and it was called The Future Tomorrow and I. And it was like a 5 or 4-part show that was, about these things that were happening in the future, like sort of like a Black Mirror kind of thing. And the first show, it started with this woman, this woman who was in like outer space, and she was attempting to make a artificial heart in zero gravity. And her husband comes on, and they're having this call, and it's like he's a hologram. And the call takes so long, and it's so sappy, and it's so much how much they love each other, and the way they express it, it's so, not what I'm used to. And like, there's no way I'm going to get through this show. But I just, so I fast forward a little bit, I'm just getting the gist of it. And she went away for 3 years. Like, there's a moment where he's got like a bulldog, and he puts it on his lap, and she's petting it, even though it's a hologram. He goes, you can't pet it, right? They've been doing this for 3 years. Like, I mean, it's implied. And like, and they keep on going back and forth and saying these things. And the dialogue is just painful because of, how simplistic and like childish it is. And so so the guy's waiting for her to come back. She's coming back in 10 days. The next scene they show is the rocket ship she's coming back in exploding, and she's dead. But they've saved her body, and they put her body they've frozen her body in cryogenics. And it goes through all these memories and how they met and how much they loved each other. And the guy's just really sad. He's pretty devastated. And so he goes to his friend, and he says he wants to clone her, which you see this was coming the whole way when they froze her body. And she says it's fine. Even though it's illegal, she'll do it. This doctor says that she'll do it, but she's got to get the brain of the person, the woman, his wife, and they've got to copy the brain so it has all the same thoughts and memories and things. And so she can't do that unless the parents sign off on it. So he goes, and the parents are very conservative and very religious. I guess they're Buddhist. And they're just like, let it go, and they're very upset at him, and they don't want him trying to clone her. And there's actually a reason, which I'll say in a moment. So, I fast forward to the thing, and then they arrest him because he breaks in and steals the body. And so going back and forth in time periods. So he has to serve 3 years in jail or something. But he goes and gets the cloning done anyway, so they go back into the past. And then he's getting the cloning done. And the woman's scanning the woman's brain, and he says, oh, she's reading about gender reassignment surgery. And I'm like, oh, fuck, they're taking it in this direction. And so the guy's going, there's no way, right? And so this guy who's heartbroken, and he can't imagine living without his wife, and the woman reveals, the doctor says, there's all these memories here, and shows the memories of the girl telling her parents that she was actually a boy in a girl's body, and her parents telling her no, she had to suppress that, and her parents making her, all these things, right? This is why the parents didn't want to do have this, go through this again. And so the doctor is telling the guy's devastated. There's some memories of her basically saying that, she's marrying this guy because he's not as bad as other ones, but she doesn't, And so he's like, his whole life's a lie. And then the woman gives him the option of her incarnating as coming back as being cloned as a female, or B, a transgender male, right? As giving her a male body, changing a chromosome so that she could be the person that she felt like she was on the inside, like this whole agenda they're pushing, right? And the guy's like devastated. He's going to jail, and now his wife's coming back as a dude. And so, I fast forward to the end, and he's getting out of prison, and his wife is now a male, and his cloned wife, and like he's risked everything, and like now his life is kind of ruined, and like he's not even going to be with this new clone that he's risked everything for. And then the clone goes to the moon and is, saying something romantic about, the clone's former husband in a past. And I was sitting there going, it's everywhere. This agenda that they're pushing, right? And the show was there's 3 other shows I couldn't even attempt them. See, the other show that I watched was Prison Break, Prison Escape from Danforth. It was a true story that I was aware of. It was a well-done show that I wouldn't really recommend watching. It's a known story where these 2 dudes, prisoners, are having, banging some woman who works as a civilian woman who works in the, where they do sewing, right? They have these jobs in the prison, and these prisoners are sewing uniforms and things. And one of the guys is having sex with her, and then they break that up. So she's having sex with his friend, and they get her to give him hacksaws and other tools that they use to break out of prison, right? Spoiler alert. But you know that coming in because the woman's being interviewed. Like the first scene in the show is she's being interviewed about her relationship with these guys, and it's known that they broke out of prison. And so the things that I wanted to point out here is that it's just becomes like something where you root for people who are the protagonists in movies and TV shows. I've talked about that with serial killers, right? That serial killers and villains, like now with Disney, they've made Maleficent, a hero that used to be a villain, and the descendants were grandkids of former Disney villains, right? Where they're blurring the lines between good and bad, and they're saying that these villains are now heroes. It's been a big, the serial killers in multiple shows and TV and movies and things like that are heroes. And so you're kind of rooting for the guys to get out. Like you're kind of get invested in these guys escaping. And, this woman is going to go along with them, and she's supposed to pick them up, and there's a whole, stuff to do with that, whether she'll show up or not. But she's cheating on her husband. She's treating her husband like shit. And she's begging these 2 guys. And when he asks her, confronts her, she berates him, and she, hates him. And her husband's trying to do his best. Her husband is clearly mentally impaired. I looked at the interviews of these people in real life, and they're like as stupid as they're portrayed in the movie, right? Like the guy is like pretty much he's barely functioning mentally, the husband. And she's cheating on him, and she's not bright either. Like they're both really degraded, low-level people. And so they show the guys breaking out in like the 5th episode, and then like the 6th episode, like 8 episodes, they start off the episode with this cop, and you don't know who this guy is, and he's going to the store and getting condiments for his family, and he goes back home. He wakes his wife up, and he makes out with her for a little bit and talks about how he can't wait to get home and have the party with they're having a party and people over. And he gets back in his patrol car, and he had heard a call for that there was a break-in at a convenience store or something, liquor store, and there were 3 armed Caucasian men, and one of them is the younger guy, who's involved in the prison break. And the cop comes up on him, and the younger guy starts shooting him, and he shoots him like multiple times, and then drives over him with a car, and the guy's still alive. And one of his criminal friends comes up and shoots the guy in his head, and the young guy is like saying, "I'm sorry," but it's a brutal murder, right? And then they show the other guys, who's an older Hispanic guy. He's kind of a famous actor. I forget his name. All these people are, A-list actors. It's a high budget show. And he goes to this guy's house who employs ex-cons, and he was an ex-con himself. He's some kind of like jeweler or something, right? And he said he wanted to apologize to the guy. The guy said, "Well, can't wait." He's an old guy. And the guy said, "No, I want to do it while I still have courage." And so he opens the door, and the Hispanic guy punches the old guy in the face, and then drops him down the flight of stairs, and then locks him in his trunk, and is beating on him and trying to get information about where this guy has money. He worked for the guy, and he thinks this guy has tens of thousands of dollars stored away somewhere. And the guy either won't give up the money or doesn't have any. And so the guy gets pissed at him. He's with his buddy, and they're using drugs, and he's got stripper girlfriend. shows the guy in the trunk, and these two girls are like, "This is fucked up." And then he gets mad at the guy, and he wraps the guy's face in duct tape. And he comes back, and later on, and he's like, "Oh, he's dead." And I'm like, "Yeah, he couldn't breathe. You completely covered like all of his mouth." So it's a horrible thing. And then he hacks the guy up with a hacksaw, and his nickname is Hacksaw, right? And so it was good that they did this because, you're rooting for these people, but they're horrible people. And they're in prison for a reason. They're both murderers. And, they have to put a lot of effort into the prison break. It's kind of interesting. But, you root for people to get out of prison because they're, when they're the protagonists of a TV show or movie. But really, you don't want that because they're murderers, right? It costs the state probably hundreds of thousands of dollars to track them down because it took them a long time to find these guys, right? And so then they show the woman back when she was much younger. And she was married to a different guy. And she's at some sweatshop where she's sewing. And her husband works there. And her husband, who she's cheating on later, the husband that you know about, is also there. And they go out in the woods and they're having sex, and they're like they're like mentally impaired people. And her husband, her old husband, catches them and confronts her, and she's like a total piece of shit to him. And he says he's going to take their kid, who she was, the kid was going to daycare, and he was like, why don't you just stay at home and be a stay-at-home mom? Because for what we pay for daycare, it's almost a wash. She's like, no, I got to do what I have to do, and, all these things, right? And so she talks to the new guy, the guy she's cheating on her then husband with, and she says, look, he's trying to take my kid, and so he has violent tendencies. And he goes, well, does he beat you up? And she goes, no, but he could. And so she gets the guy to go in there and just look at the guy and smile at the bathroom at work. And this guy's banging his wife. So the guy reacts and punches him in the face twice. And so the next scene, you see her, and she's going to this guy's hotel room, her then husband, and she's forcing him to sign a document and where she gets full custody. And he's screwed because otherwise the guy's going to press assault charges and he's going to go to prison. And so she's completely manipulated this situation. And so after that, she goes to her kid who's like 4 or 5 years old, and she goes, your dad doesn't want to be your dad anymore. Because, just horrible, fucking, just a horrible person, right? And the kid's like, what? She goes, your dad, he's just tired of being your dad, and he's not going to be your dad anymore. But this guy's going to be your dad. And the kid's like, well, I don't want to call him dad. And then the guy's like, it's okay if he doesn't call me dad. And he's like, no, you took a punch for me. He's going to call you dad. I'm never going to forget you took a punch for me. Of course she did. And so at the end of the movie, he confronts her, and she was going to go along with these guys, and she ends up backing out, right? And she's talking to the guy, her husband, her latest husband. And he's like, I know you cheated on me. And everyone's telling him he's cheating on her. He won't believe it. Everyone's telling her, telling him through the whole movie. Because everybody knows in the prison, right? There's another guard in there with her. And she keeps on taking these guys in the back room and banging them. And so, everyone knows. And she's saying how sorry she was. But part of the plan was she called him her glitch. And part of the plan was that she was supposed to drug him when they went out for Chinese food and put some sleeping pills in his drink. And then she was going to go pick up the prisoners and go back to her house. And one of the guys was going to kill him. And she was going along with that. She was part of the plan. She backed out the last minute. But she was literally going to kill this guy for doing nothing but loving her and tolerating what's such a horrible fucking person, right? And the show's pretty gross. It's well done, but it's gross, and, anything that involves prisoners and this kind of stuff. But, this idea that, I talked about this with reality TV shows, they can cast anybody as a hero or a villain. And I'm glad they made the episode of what these people did to get in prison, because you see what horrible people they are, and it's really impossible to root for them because they're out in society and they're going to do that again, right? I mean, they're murderous people and horrible human beings. There's one other good scene where the older guy, the Hispanic guy's talking to the young guy about the breaking out of prison, and he said, I thought it and I'm making it happen. I thought it and I and I'm putting it in my heart, and then I'm going to manifest it. Like he's saying it, like not in a new age way, but it's, what we believe in Sajmark happens, right? Although you can't make things happen that aren't supposed to happen, right? Like there was a destiny there, but their ending of the movie isn't good for them. They the whole thing. Anyways, all right. So I just want to talk about those two things briefly here. I'm going to wrap this one up, and like I said, I'm going to make a video tomorrow and put it up on the Rumble account, and I'll talk more about that in my next video here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.